Hello and welcome back to Talking Europe, and we continue with our discussion about the future of employment and working in Europe in the wake of the pandemic. We've already heard the position of the EU Commission. Now let's have a listen to what the other side of the equation thinks, the workers and trade unions of Europe. We're very happy to welcome as our guest Philippe Pochet of the European Trade Union Institute. Thank you very much for joining us today. The EU has just held its social summit in Porto. It had outlined its goals for 2030 as increasing employment rates to 78%, almost doubling the number of people receiving training, and reduced by 15 million the number of people living in poverty in Europe. More balanced, more fairness, more social, according to the Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa. What's your view on the outcome of the summit? Is it enough? Is it ambitious enough?
I think that you can have two readings of the summit. One is a success. It's important to keep or to put the social dimension at the European agenda. And the summit, the goal of the summit is to remind us that social is important. So if you have this reading, the summit is a success. But you can have another reading, it's what's new. And you just mentioned all the targets, the three main targets. And you return in the past, 20 years ago, you had the Lisbon summit, and they were more or less the same. And 10 years later, you have Europe 2020. And at that time, we were already speaking about reducing poverty. So you can say it's a success if you see the process. If you see the content, it's a lot of blah, blah, blah.
Do you think it's because of the pandemic has allowed it to be more ambitious, or do you think it's a wasted opportunity?
I think it's partly a waste of opportunity, because with the pandemic, everyone was saying that we have to relaunch the software, that we are a kind of critical juncture, and that's I think that I miss in this summit. You have a lot of words that are using, as you said, fair and etc. But what is the key challenge of the society now? It's inequality, and you have one inequality in the final declaration, one time inequality in the action program. So inequality, which is at the center of what is happening now, is not really tackled with the different documents.
But do you not get the impression that COVID-19 has allowed and forced the EU to change many of its dogma? It's been deficit rules have been broken. Governments are spending trillions to prop up their economies. Do you not think that means there is a different future is possible when it comes to social affairs and employment in Europe?
Certainly, I hope that a different future is possible. In the same time, the discourse about austerity has to return on the agenda, not today, but perhaps in 1, 2, 3 years, has not disappeared. And so we are here in a very important fight. As the pandemic, as this whole discussion about the future change really the rationale of the economic discourse of the semester, or is just a pause and then we will return to reform of pension, to have a reform of the welfare state, etc., in the near future, because they will say, okay, look, the debt is too high and we have to reduce, and or to reduce, to cut in the public services. So I think that's why this moment is so important, because if collectively, it's question of collectively, all the actors are not able to change the dominant discourse, we will have the same in few years, I fear.
Do you think we have learned from the austerity years in the wake of the 2008 and 2009 crises? Are you hoping for a different approach this time around?
I think we have learned, and that's for certain, because it was such a failure, and that even though all the important international organizations are recognizing, no IMF or OECD, that Europe did a big mistake with this kind of forced austerity that we had 10 years ago. But how much I will learn, and how much we will enter in a new narrative, in a new paradigm. And that's the question, because we have learned there is a lot of new thing, and I think in the budgetary term, what is happening at EU level is really important. But it is not in the treaty. It is for a few years, so it can change. It's something that is not stabilized, and that's, I think, the key question for me.
Returning to one of the points you mentioned earlier, the question of inequality in Europe. The pandemic's economic impact has not fallen evenly. It's women and young people that have been affected disproportionately. Do you think the EU has any solutions to remedy that problem?
We have to frame the question not only in terms of poverty, and I welcome that the EU want to reduce the level of poverty. They set exactly the same 10 years ago and 20 years ago, and was not working. So let's hope that this time it will work better. But in the same time that the young and women were as you said, much more than the rest. A lot of people make money from the crisis, from the stock market. The rich became more rich. And where is the discourse about that? What is the discourse that if we enter in a society that has to do transition, and I think the main one is the climate change transition, or we will deal with the richer people, and not just to address the question of poverty. Important it is, sure, but how we reduce this inequality at the top bottom, the top 1% or the top 10% that have benefit from the pandemic and are richer now than before.
We're returning to that situation in the wake of the pandemic, and we've really seen that it was low-paid workers, delivery workers, food shop workers and farm workers, for example, who played a vital role. Have you got any expectations that the consequences of the pandemic will force a change from employers to better protect those people that are often on very short-term contracts?
Yes, we could hope that, but I'm Belgium, and just look at the situation in Belgium. There is a discussion every 2 years. There is a discussion about wage increase, and what is on the table from the employer side is that we can have just a wage increase on 0.4% plus inflation. That's the Belgium system. And not more because of competitiveness. So the one paid really at a low level, they can expect after the crisis 0.4% of real wage increase at best from the employers. And the employers were arguing, look, we are still in a competitive world and nothing has changed. So certainly discourse about this kind of workers has changed, and some of the discourse can be powerful, but on reality we don't see that in the pocket of the workers.
And speaking of how much workers are earning, one of the big questions that has really been difficult to find a resolution is an EU-wide minimum wage. There's not been very much progress on that because the divisions within European nations, Central European nations, Northern European nations and Southern European nations have very different positions. Have you any expectation or any hope that a compromise can be found on those kind of questions?
I think that's the main problem is the Nordic country, and the Nordic country want to keep their system, and they have no minimum wage, a legal minimum wage, and they want to have guarantee, and they don't want that Europe intervene and create trouble in their system. So I think that the commissioner is trying his best to find a solution that gives guarantees to the Nordic, mainly the Swedish and the Danish, that they can have keep their own system of minimum wage when giving at Europe a system which gives some convergence, because it's really modest. And finally, that's if there is the directive and there is calculation from the ETUI, and the calculation show that there is a lot of people that are working, but they not enough to be out of poverty. So if we have the threshold that is proposed, we can lift 20 million people out of poverty. So I think that's really important. It will be very difficult, but that's key for the future of Europe.
And looking further into the future beyond COVID, the world of work is set to be revolutionised by digitalisation, by the need for greener jobs. Do you think the EU is ready for that? And will some workers have to pay the price for the changes that are needed?
I think they are ready and not ready. They are ready in the discourse, as you know, it's the two main topics of the current Commission, the digitalisation and climate change. But it's not enough to put that you want to have a just transition, that you solve the problem. If you put just and fair, in all the verb of noon. It doesn't change the situation. That will be a sea change if we want to reach the target of the Paris Agreement. If we want to reduce our emission by 55% in the next 9 years, it's no more than 9 years. It will change the transportation. It will change the housing. It will change or what we are eating. So I think that's the problem is that the Commission very often is really too optimistic, and there will be a lot of change, and there is a need of a lot of funds, not only for the coal industry, but certainly I think for the car industry in the future, and that need to rethink what kind of society, what we produce, what we consume in the coming decade. So it's a very long-term process that we have to take, I think, radical measure as soon as possible, which have potentially negative impact, and that has to be compensated. If not, nobody will accept the change, and then you will have the gilets jaunes like everywhere. So that's really, for me, the key question for the social question for the future.
Philippe Pochet of the European Trade Union Institute, thank you so much for talking to us. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for in the show. Thank you too for watching Talking Europe here at France 24. Do stay tuned for more news and headlines after this short break.